our memories help us create our identity. And so when I remember when I first started on this whole journey, I had no idea who I was. I completely lost myself. And all I knew was that I liked my couch and I liked the scented candle that was burning on the table. That's it. That's what I knew about myself. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go out and pull weeds and and plant flowers. And then I realized like 5 minutes later, well, I ate that too. And so I came up with a lot of things that I didn't like before I could find things that I did like. But that is part of resilience is figuring out and having the tenacity to go out and create this new identity. Sometimes we create it for the first time, or recreate your identity, and that's part of resilience as well. Um, and then just really connecting with gratitude and joy.
Welcome to the Persistence You podcast with Lisbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Lisbeth Meredith is an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and strivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
Okay, so I'm so excited to finally introduce you to Emily Moon. I met Emily last August, so a few months back, several months back, when I took a wonderful travel writing job. Emily wasn't one of the journalists, but I met her at a hang gliding event that didn't ever happen. Sometimes the things that don't happen still turn out to be something great, and meeting her was. So I think you're going to enjoy Emily's conversation all about reinvention. And speaking of reinvention, I feel like lately I've been, one, I think it's more light out. It's April 1st today, April Fool's Day, and I'm more open recently to doing new things. Emily talks about in her interview the importance of being willing sometimes to just try everything. Throw spaghetti at the walls to see what you like doing, what sparks a sense of purpose for you. So, especially after a dramatic relationship ending, or if someone has been in a very, very long-term relationship that might end due to death, Emily talks about learning that, maybe she wasn't a gardener, but maybe there were these things that she found that she did like. And little by little, by the process of elimination, she learned what makes her tick. And really, it's no wonder that Emily is now a therapist to the stars in Tennessee. Although, so some of my recent learning has been fun. Sourdough bread making class coming up. I just learned to make something called oxymels. Have you ever heard of them? Because I'd never heard of them. And shrubs. And some people learn to make those because they're going to put them in an adult beverage, or you can put them in something like LaCroix, which is what I've been doing, and just making something that's actually good for you and that makes your beverage time more special or really neat when you have guests over. I was very fortunate to have guests from my home of Alaska recently, a friend that I grew up with, and it was so much fun to just have time to sit around and reminisce and even look up old friends and see what they were doing, people we didn't see at our high school reunions many thousands of years ago. So anyway, enjoy Emily Moon. And I can't wait to hear what you're thinking, what you think about the interview. Thanks as ever for being here.
It's so fantastic to see you today, and also to see you not in hang gliding outfits. Okay,
Yeah.
when I met you in person before, we both were like getting ready for a great big thrill. And isn't life just like that? You get all excited, you have a goal you're going to accomplish, and then, nope, just kidding.
Yes. Yes, we got grounded. We got grounded. And and hopefully when life's bumps happen, we can get grounded like we did that day.
That's right. I would much rather be in an abundance of caution, grounded, than somebody crossing their fingers and saying, I think the weather's going to be okay.
I know. Well, the risk taker in me was like, oh, well, we could like just try to see what was
Right.
No.
I'm so glad that I got to meet you that special day. That was really wonderful. And one thing that fascinated me so much, not only your beautiful name, Emily Moon, but also the work that you do, helping people in crisis and doing, and being a clinician, a therapist. I absolutely love that. What fueled your desire to work with people going through high conflict?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of has a story, and my story of the conflict that was within my family when I was growing up, and my parents had a high conflict divorce. And so at a young age, I always knew that I wanted to, well, I actually thought I wanted to be an actress, but what I really think my calling was to be a therapist. And I ended up kind of working out my childhood trauma in the courtroom, actually. And so, I just had some unfinished business that I needed to tend to. And it landed me working with people in high conflict. And as a result of helping them, it kind of helped me as well. So, yeah. And I also just wanted to provide some hope when people were feeling like there might not be, or helping them believe that there's life on the other side of the crisis.
Right.
So that's really what led me there.
Emily, when you say you found yourself working out your issues in court, what you mean is you are working with people in crisis, but you do forensic work. You end up testifying in court about it. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I work with families going through high conflict divorce, and as a result, there are times when I need to go into court and testify and provide my findings, and so I do that in hopes that I can help the kids, help the families. But then that kind of moved me. I developed a niche for high conflict, and then that kind of moved me into working with celebrities in high conflict, antique firms that were having conflict in their communication. And so it's really my work has really evolved. But what I have found is that I really want to provide hope. That's been the continuous theme through everything that I've done, is helping people be hopeful, that there is something on the other side. It gets better, and to help them believe and support their belief in that it can be better. And that kind of gets into this idea of, resilience and believing that people can get through this serious hardship that they're going through. So, yeah, when I was young, I always believed that there was more. I always believed, I didn't really know what that meant, but that I always had that belief. And when I was little, I remember going up in the attic and just believing that Hollywood was just on the other side of the wall. And I thought that was the more in life. And I kind of chased that throughout my life, this idea of like being famous, and what I've realized is really what I longed for was to be seen and heard in a way that I never felt like I was. And that belief and that hope for me was like what caused me to be resilient. That belief that there was something bigger and better for me, and that it always helped me push through the adversity that I was going through as a kid, as a teenager, even and as an adult. Was really, my resilience was pretty tied to my hope and belief. Yeah.
I like that. Was there a time where, you had a moment as an adult and you thought something has shifted.
Mm.
This is that pivotal moment where there was life before this and life after this. And suddenly my work and my life, it's all coming together in 3D.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about how probably 3 times in my life, really, I kind of came to the crossroads of like, do you want to go this way or that way? And 2 times prior to now, I said, I'm good. I think I'll just keep doing it my way. And then there came a time about 4 years ago where really my life as I knew it just fell apart. Everything was stripped from me. And at that time, I realized that I was going to have to make a change. And in my mind, in that moment, I said to God, I'm like, all right, because I believe in God, the universe, all of it. And I was like, I pick you, God, and me, and let's see what you got. because together we're going to do this thing. And so in that moment, I changed the trajectory of my life. And, that was a huge moment. But what I'm also realizing in all of the work that I've done is that, I believe that there's this path to more, and I'm on it, and I'm working hard to change, my mindset and the way I think, and just, asking myself, what do I want in my life? But what I'm realizing is that my resilience shows up so differently in the work, like the professional part of me, the entrepreneur part of me. That person is driven and just put your head down, and I don't question it, and I just go, and I'm very resilient. I bounce back quick. And then there's the relational part of me that is not so resilient, or it's kind of like my strength and my weakness, the thing that makes me resilient in my work, the professional entrepreneur, that kind of like, don't give up, and things can get better, and believe. That's kind of my weakness in my personal life. And so in my personal life, I've realized like, oh, or my relational life, I'm not so resilient maybe. And I'm really kind of studying that of like, well, that like can do attitude and don't ever stay. And it can be so different. And all these things that I say to myself as the entrepreneur, it's like, oh, but that's what's keeping me stuck.
Right.
And so I never really thought about the difference of like how what makes me so resilient in one way really actually is kind of my weakness in the other way.
Right. Do you mean that do you feel like sometimes you talked yourself into staying in a relationship that wasn't very healthy because you're like, you can do this, you got this, and
Yeah.
don't give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm such a doer, and I feel like, in my professional life, I work hard to make things happen. But, in my personal life, when you're dealing with other people, you can't make things happen, and you have to, I've learned the hard way, and you kind of have to let it go. And so I am having a life tutorial in real time about just letting go. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of made me realize that how do you balance that resiliency in certain parts of your life, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you do still work with a lot of high conflict divorces and
Yeah.
people with children. What are some of the mistakes that we make that we might not know we've made with our kids, whether we have had a bad catch in our relationship and the child has witnessed that, or the relationship has ended, and whether it's divorce or separation, if there was never a marriage? What are some of the things that are really to be avoided that we easily do in front of kids?
Yeah. One of the things that I talk mostly to parents about is kind of teaching our kids that it is okay to love both parents and to have a relationship with both parents. And the gift that you give them, that you would love them more than you hate your ex. And so a lot of times parents will disparage another parent, or possibly say things that pressure the kids to feeling like they have to pick a side. And so I do think, especially for the younger ones, that is a great gift. But also I think too, just understanding what to teach kids. Our parents, they did the best they could, but some of our parents didn't teach us what we needed to know. And so I think helping parents teach kids the importance of boundaries, and what does that mean? Because boundaries really are kind of created to protect us and other people, but protect us from other people. And so, really explaining that, and that sometimes, our feelings, just because you're angry at a parent, in divorce situations, you get to pick sometimes. And so what kids often learn is like, oh, well, this parent's making me mad, so I'm going to go stay at mom's. And how it's important to work through conflict, and that we don't just get to erase someone because things get hard. And so some of the lessons that can be taught in divorce, even though divorce is a horrible, horrible time in most people's lives, there's some great life lessons that you can really model, kind of like here's what to do in these situations. Oftentimes parents want to protect kids and from pain. And I say to parents, we really aren't in a position anymore to protect kids because you've theoretically lost them 50% of the time. But what you now can do is provide them with wisdom, provide them with life lessons, provide them with like, what's the next right thing to do? And so it can be an opportunity to learn and to grow your children if you can change your mindset into thinking this is an opportunity rather than something that's just been handed to us and we're all victims of it.
Right. I like that. And I really love what you said about, could you say it again about you need to love your child more than you hate your ex?
Yes. Yeah, that happens a lot, especially in high conflict. We get so dug into our beliefs and that we are victims of. And quite frankly, I tell parents all the time, even if there's something like an affair, I mean, you still brought something to the table. Maybe it's that you're codependent or you're an enabler or you put your head in the sand. But if we can all kind of look at ourselves and ask, what did I bring to the table to get me to this place? It allows us to take accountability and we move away from resentment, which is nothing more than victim anger. And we move away from resentment and more to accountability. When we come to a place of accountability, then we show up different in the relationship with our kids. And we can then say to our kids, you know what, your dad and I did the best we could, wasn't good enough. He did some things, I did some things, but you're free to love us both. We are perfectly imperfect. That's tough. When you're in a high conflict divorce, that's really tough to get people to that place, but that is what's best for kids if we can do that.
There really is no training on how to navigate a relationship loss respectfully with children that our parents had access to, because honestly, divorce wasn't a viable option for so many people in generations past. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's a thing. So we didn't have those role models to help us. So when I was a young mom, wanting custody of my kids, and, I did get physical custody and, shared legal, whatever. But I remember thinking, and I'm not proud of this, why does he get to show up when he wants to visit the children, but then not show up the other times? And this person doesn't even pay support. They haven't earned the right. And it was an interesting, I'm so lucky that I had a professional talk to me who said, hey, these are different things. And what you need to understand is it isn't going to be fair. And your child isn't a bargaining chip. And it's not about winning and losing. And you don't get to say this person doesn't get to see their child because they haven't pitched in to help financially support them. That's not on you. That's not for you to determine. And I just didn't know that, and I'm so glad that I had someone get sharp with me early on, because how do you know? No one's giving you the ropes. And it can really hurt kids when they hear a parent talking so negatively about the other parent, because what brought them together, well, as a child, you feel like it was you. And so if somehow you were the main focus of their union, then maybe it was your fault that they had this horrible separation and divorce, or whatever it is, separation. So I think this is really helpful. Having someone like you to navigate high conflict divorces can be absolutely helping future generations in that family, not just the kids now that we're seeing.
Yeah. One of my goals in all of this is really to help parents teach their kids what they need to know so that they don't repeat the pattern. And I wish that my parents had known what to teach my brother and I so that we didn't repeat the pattern. I too am divorced and have children of divorce, and I too had a high conflict divorce. And so I definitely have walked that path and have felt in my life where things were handed to me that I also created for myself that were unfair. But I think the lesson is, the lesson that we are trying to learn is really like, how do you be your best self in the moments when you feel like life is not being fair and that you are a victim, let's say, but like you're still accountable to doing the next right thing and to teaching your children, hopefully, how to um, do the next right thing, I suppose. So, I do think it's really difficult for parents, especially in that moment when, yeah, single moms I work with a lot and dads too now, but that have the burden to carry all the responsibility, and the other parent shows up when and if they want to. And oftentimes, it's easy for us to want to blame the other parent, but it's a constant um, being open and willing to see the other side of the coin and how can you grow from this opportunity. Everybody is like, wants to punch me when I say that in their moments of adversity. But truly, I mean, that's the test is like, we can all do it when it's easy, but when it's tough, I think that's when our integrity and our character show up.
Right. I have to agree. One of the things that helped me was getting into a support group that I could have a place to vent, but it wasn't my kids, it wasn't to them necessarily. And I'm not suggesting that they never caught my worst and say, absolutely did, but making an effort as to a place to take those concerns and to be heard and to listen to what other people had to share.
Hence why I suppose you and I went hang gliding,
Right.
because, to have new experiences, create memories, and our memories help us create our identity. And so I remember when I first started on this whole journey, I had no idea who I was. I completely lost myself. And all I knew was that I liked my couch and I liked the scented candle that was burning on the table. That's it. That's what I knew about myself. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go out and pull weeds and plant flowers. And then I realized like 5 minutes later, well, I ate that too. And so I came up with a lot of things that I didn't like before I could find things that I did like. But that is part of resilience is figuring out and having the tenacity to go out and create this new identity. Sometimes we create it for the first time, or recreate your identity, and that's part of resilience as well. Um, and then just really connecting with gratitude and joy, I think, is so important. And I remember when I first started doing this, I was so scared to connect with gratitude because I thought for sure it was going to get pulled out from under me because my life had been really hard and I didn't feel like there were a lot of things in my life to be grateful for. And I had this theory like if I got too happy or too comfortable, the bad things were going to happen. And so I was scared to do that. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that because when our pain tolerance gets really high, we get really used to being in pain. And so we quit practicing gratitude or we don't feel like we have anything to be grateful for. And so that practice of gratitude truly, and I never knew this, but truly it does help us connect to a new mindset, a different mindset, our new identity. It is so important to come from a place of what we're grateful for rather than seeing what we don't have.
Right.
It's the abundance versus the scarcity mindset.
I like that. I like that a lot because no matter what situation we find ourselves in, there is something that we can be very grateful for. And training our minds to find those things is going to make all the difference when things get even harder. Sometimes we mistakenly say, well, I think I've hit rock bottom. Things can only get better. It's like, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can.
So true. I do think I have this theory that, God pushes us all the way to the edge of the cliff. And then you're like, I can't take it anymore. And he's like, yes, you can. And
Yeah.
step it push you a little further. And then finally, something breaks and it gets better. But yeah, I mean, just being pushed past the point of what we think we can take really does teach us, man, we are really so strong. Most of us are so strong. We just have untapped potential.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were happy to have it untapped, but As it turns out, it gets adapt. And I think that some of these lessons are true, whether someone has a high conflict relationship or whether they've lost a spouse through death and they're still looking to have that chapter 3. And, finding a way, like starting with gratitude, beautiful way to start. Beautiful way. Now, how can people reach you if they want to know more about your work or if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So I have a website, Emily Moon and the Stars, and I will send you information. But yeah, and also emilymoon.life. I have 2 different websites. That .life is for my divorce work, and then Emily Moon and Stars is more for kind of like my community that I'm creating for support and this kind of idea of like chapter 3. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're there to help people through this time. And also that you live in my now home state. That is fantastic.
I know. Since we got grounded,
Yes.
we'll see each other again soon in the friendly skies.
I surely look forward to that when it's less windy. And thank you so much, Emily, for being on Persistence You today.
Did I tell you she was great? And also great is Dr. Vasu Tolia. She is amazing. And every once in a while, as you know, I will publish a couple of episodes of Persistence You on one day. I had the pleasure of connecting with Dr. Tolia months back, and she was a medical researcher. She is a doctor, of course. But when the time came for her to change careers and pivot, she learned a way to make a contribution still to the medical community and research, but through the use of art. And it's so wonderful. I can tell you from personal experience how great it feels to use a different side of the brain when we have been working for decades in something different. So I've loved it. She is an inspiration, and enjoy Dr. Tolia. Thank you as ever. And please share with a friend. I love to hear from you, and or on my Facebook author page. I'll see you in a couple of weeks after Dr. Tolia.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence You with Lisbeth.
Yes.